load, a huge load of people who can read and understand that something ain't right in terms of what it says constitutionally and strike it out of the record books. Now, if a record book gets down to one line, we'll put that one line in a book that is right and burn that old piece of junk. Just that simple. It's gone. So we're not looking at things differently. Everybody can get along. It's not a problem. The problem is that the quote cabal, the Zionist Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, basically are in control at this point to an extent. Now that's getting less and less and less as time goes on. The closer we get to culminating our movement, our actions, then the more things have been coming out in the mainstream media, if you know the background, that shows that they are in support. They proved it. And to me, that's the second green light. Now, when we first did our paperwork, the first set of paperwork, we got a call from a high level person at the Pentagon asking if we could duplicate that. And the people, quite honestly, said, we don't know. So they went to a couple of people online who've got shows and whatnot. And during November, this last year is when we started this. And we've got 20 plus states now. So we get a majority of states, then we are going to have blogs, websites, and all kinds of chatter on the internet, because that's when we're allowed to go public at that point.
Well, you have the Free American's been established for almost 20 years. The Free American magazine established for 20 years. I have fought this whole New World Order for that long. And if I can get a little bit of back, I mean, all I got to do is sell some books. I mean, there's a million people out there that ought to be able to read Mystery Babylon, which got the whole history of the Rothschilds in it. And isn't it interesting that the Bible warned us 2,000 years ago about the mark of the beast, and they got commercials for it today on television? George used to forget his medication. George used to forget his medication, but now we got this little chip, this health link right here, and it tells the doctors everything about him, including his bank account. And that's what they want. According to Aaron Russo, one of my Jewish friends, Aaron Russo said that Nicholas Rockefeller told him that the whole plan was to chip everybody. And they've already done that in Germany, because in Alamogordo, New Mexico, where they have a German base, the German soldiers pay for their purchases at Walmart by waving their hand over the scanner.
Yeah, well, what you don't know is that the chips have already been implanted. They've been included in your food in what they call nanotechnology, and you've ingested it. So the problem is not the idea that these people can be as controlling and all pervasive in every friggin' thing there is, but the idea that they're beginning to fail at their missions. They're not being able to complete their missions. And that is really, really extraordinarily important.
A friend of mine told me one time, Clay, they don't have the power they want you to believe they have. They don't have that power. They want you to believe you got that, but if they had that kind of power, really, we'd still be under the Persian Empire, the Russian Empire, the English Empire. We can fight them. We can make a difference. Now, there's some ways that they suggest on this Delphi technique to handle this. Step one, always be charming, courteous, and pleasant. Smile. Moderate your voice so as not to come across as belligerent or aggressive. And step two, stay focused. If possible, jot down your thoughts and questions. And now, what they do, folks, is they rule you by consensus. In other words, if you sit there and keep your mouth shut, then they assume that you agree with everything they're putting forward. When facilitators are asked questions they don't want to answer, they often digress from the issue that was raised. And try instead to put the questioner on the defensive. Do not fall for this tactic. Courteously bring the facilitator back to their original question. If he rephrases it and it becomes an accusatory statement, a popular tactic, simply say, that's not what I asked. What I asked was, and repeat your question. And step 3, be persistent. If putting you on the defensive doesn't work, facilitators often resort to long monologues that drag on for several minutes. During that time, the group usually forgets the question that was asked, which is the intent. Let the facilitator finish. Then, with polite persistence, say, but you didn't answer my question. My question was, and repeat your question. Never become angry under any circumstances. Anger directed at the facilitator will immediately make the facilitator the victim. That defeats the purpose. The goals of the facilitators is to make the majority of the group members like them, but to alienate anyone that might pose a threat to the realization of their agenda. People with firm, fixed beliefs who are not afraid to stand up for what they believe in are obvious threats. If a participant becomes a victim, the facilitator loses face and favor with the crowd. So that is why groups are broken up into groups of 7 or 8, and why objections are written on paper rather than voiced aloud, where they can be open to public discussion and debate. It's called crowd control. Stand up for what you believe in, folks, and that's simply liberty. And you can diffuse that Delphi technique. Never give up.
Well, the thing that goes along with that is that you're going to have a lot of people disappear in the process. There's a link I'm going to send you that shows people questioning Obama, and they got their name and address, and you can't find them anymore. They're gone. And that exercise of power makes people believe that they can do that with anybody. Problem is that they can't. There's a few of them and millions of us. Now, the best way, and this goes back to your combat training and martial arts, is not to be where somebody throws a punch. That's martial arts. In the military, it's not to be seen, just the end result felt by the enemy. And the end result is very simple. If you can stand up for your freedom and not be extraordinarily obvious in the process, then they won't see it coming. And that's basically what we are doing.
Yeah, I have a little different, take on that. You know, I always let somebody have the first punch. Take your best shot. Take your best shot, and you know, when they see the smile on my face and I don't fall down, they get a little nervous.
Well, I was trained a little different in the military, and that was to shoot the enemy on sight. And instead of killing the guy, he was supposed to be one of the best agents, I merely put a bullet in the ground. And when he decided to run and see if he could beat my speeding bullet, he went plop, plop, plop across the driveway and left a bunch of stinky footprints behind. The boys did not know that he was fooling with an AMVET that was better trained than he was. And he was supposed to be one of their best. And I'm not, and it ain't a challenge. I'm not saying, try me. I'm just saying that at that particular point it didn't work. And I'm afraid, I respect the idea that they can kill people, but I don't fear it, or I wouldn't be on this show, just that simple. And in terms of coming together in terms of freedom, you got a lot of people out there that want their freedom but don't have a clue as to how to go about getting it. We've already found the process. It's legal. It's accepted both nationally and internationally. We've got countries ready to recognize our newfound freedom at the point that the announcement's made. So this is the momentum has already shifted, and they're basically the bad guys are beginning to be on the run now. In a movie called Training Day, there was a little statement that I like real well, and it says, "Ain't no fun hunting when the rabbit's got a gun." So I looked at that realistically. I carry guns around all the time, so you know, if they want to play, then that's up to them, but they're gonna lose.
When you're ready to go public, here I am, and I'm ready to work. I got it right up on my website, folks. I got it right up on my website. It says, if you do nothing to help the cause of freedom and justice, you help the very enemy whose only goal is your total enslavement and destruction. If you fail to spread the truth about what's really happening, you become a part of the enemy's propaganda machine. When you fail to support those who are fighting on the front lines and risking everything for your benefit, you're giving aid and comfort to the enemies. You may think all is lost, but you couldn't be more wrong. Just as the people of Nazi Germany or Communist Russia, these monsters can be defeated and have been many times in the past. It just takes people like you to help. You can make a $20 donation today, folks, and get the book of your choice in a PDF file. They use Mystery Babylon. They use Mystery Babylon here to teach in Timothy Bible College, where I'm a professor. And I'm working on my master's degree on that. I'm going to get my doctorate because I kind of like to sound a Dr. Douglas. This Mystery Babylon, that ought to be in every library and everybody's home. You ought to be reading it because it's part of it's a little autobiographical because it tells you about my 20 years of fighting the CIA. My career, Drake, spans pissing off 4 presidents now.
Well, what you have to understand is that the premise of what you just said, the idea of what you just said is, they come for a guy down the road and I didn't do anything. They came for a guy next door and I didn't do anything. And then when they came for me, there was nobody else left to do anything. And if you don't literally stand up in such a fashion that your freedom's ensured, then you're spinning your wheels. Now, this effort that we're making will free this country. And that's the reason we're making the effort. Not for ourselves, but for our kids and our grandkids. We want them to be able to go outside and play and not worry about getting bombed or blown away or whatever. And this is our version of the New World Order, where the order comes from the heart and from your moral beliefs rather than somebody dictating to you how you're going to be. And that's a big, big difference. Now, one of the things we've done, and I want to make this perfectly clear, there is no religiosity of any sort involved in what we're doing at all. We've kept all of that out for a specific reason. That falls to legislation by the people. A lot of this is going to be legislated by the people. The founding documents, however, are going to be the standing guideline so that we don't make mistakes that have been made in the past. One of those being the 14th Amendment, the other one being the banking system, another one being not having the true will of the people heard. When you got 60, 70, 80% or more saying you don't want to do that, and they do it anyway, that ain't the will of the people. So therefore, they must be operating under control, financial or otherwise, and it'd be kind of nice to take these guys that pull the puppet strings and truss them up somewhere.
Yeah, they should be treated just like criminals like Bernie Madoff, huh?
Worse. The crime of treason is supposedly, the penalties are supposed to be prescribed by Congress. There's a little differential in there, and one of those is that when you do an act of treason that's premeditated, then you come under a thing called the death penalty. Now, My suggestion on that is to offer a combination of punishment. That would be, you have a choice. You can either stand trial for your life, and if found guilty, you'll be executed, or you can be exiled to the communist or socialist or whatever country that will even accept you. Now, the other part of that is that there are varying portions of crime, varying levels of it. Then to go along with that, you got clerks that are doing jobs they probably shouldn't do. But I'm not going to say that clerk in the IRS knew everything that was going on. I'm not going to say that the people at the Fed were that was nothing more than a janitor is in some way as guilty as Bernie Madoff or someone else.
It's one of the things I've been trying to tell people for years and years. Back when I was doing the militia, I tell people, look, you know, I'm certainly opposed to the whole new one world order global government, but that don't, you know, the AT&T is a part of the whole new world order plan. You know, the big companies out there, the corporations that spring up around the banks that are financed by the banks are our enemy. But I ain't going to go out and shoot the AT&T operator. You know, we don't want to do that. We don't want to hurt nobody. We just want the freedom of choice, the freedom. You know, I want the abolishment of victimless crimes. You know, I think it's a police state. If a man with a badge can come up and go, "What do you got in your pocket?" "Ooh, what's that? What's that? Is that a pipe? Is that marijuana? Is that what do you got?" "Oh, you're gonna go to jail." We've got more people in prison in America today. We've got 40 million people that have been busted for pot over the last 40 years, 50 years. You know. And we've got more people in jail right now than any communist country. They've already done to us what they did to the people in Russia. They killed 60 million people. Well, they made criminals out of at least that many people here, haven't they?
Yep.
So, you know, that's again the problem that we have. And I like your solutions. I want these people tried. We've been putting the wrong people in prison, folks. We need to turn this around. And just because you've been found guilty of having a little bit of our billion-dollar crop, that don't mean you should lose your right to vote. That don't mean you should lose your right to own a gun, because there's nothing in our Constitution about that.
There's another part to all this. And one of those things is a radical overhaul of the judicial system. That's part of the plan. As I said, this thing is intricate. It's been being worked on for quite a number of years, and so far we're the ones that hit the jackpot, from what I can see. And the ideology is to complete the paperwork that we use. And I've got lists of states that we could use help in. So, you know, you want to hear those, I can give them to you.
Yeah, let me hear the states here.
Okay, needs help. Alabama, Connecticut, Maryland, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Virginia. Those are people that need, there's somebody there that has contacted us and is willing to do it, but they're having trouble finding people. The other list that we don't have anybody in is Alaska, Arkansas, Delaware, Iowa, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, North Dakota, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And, you know, I don't know how far your show reaches, but if there are people out there who are interested, there's two contact points that I've given to Clay.
It's up on it'll be up on my site here in just a few minutes.
And you contact them, and they will be able to steer you to the right people. Now, we do have a little bit of a filter process because we've got a couple groups taking issue with what we're doing. And So if you're not a part of what's called RUSA, in terms of being in bed with them, or you don't like that movement, there's ways to get out of that. We've got paperwork, etc., that can free you from that movement. Now, the problem with that one is that they've never delivered anything. We're delivering. There's a big difference there. Plus, we have affirmations from a combination of high-level people, both financially, militarily, that are willing to support us in this effort. Now, one thing that I need to make clear, there's not going to be martial law. That ain't happening. If that were to be declared, 80 to 90% of the military are prepared to go AWOL as soon as that's declared, if it were. Now, by AWOL, that means out from under the cabal and over to the new free military. There's a big difference in this. The military is tired of being bad guys. They would much rather, instead of bringing weapons, bring some food, bring some water, bring some hands-on help, or whatever to people, than the horse hockey that's been going on. So you got to remember, every militia and every freedom group is going to be asked at the time of the announcement to support us. We're going to need all the help we can get. The military that you might have contact with is not going to be the enemy. Now, one of the things you mentioned was Sheriff Mack and the Constitutional Sheriff's Movement. That's another thing. Any of the sheriffs out there that get wind of this need to get with Sheriff Mack and make themselves constitutional, because you do not want to find yourself removed from office by being on the wrong side of this. And you will be if you're on the wrong side of this. Doesn't matter what level you are, doesn't matter how well protected you think you are, or how high your office is. So this is something to be considered and really taken seriously. And it is an option. It is an option to go from the bad side to the good side almost immediately. If you've got, any kind of faith or belief in the oath of office that you took to the Constitution, just like I did in the military, you'll do this.
Well, I've been working on this for 25 years. I blew the whistle on the whole CIA drug dealing operation. You know, as long as drugs are illegal, then this whole criminal system works, because they're making criminal. The CIA is bringing the drugs in here under 4 presidents now. They keep the drugs illegal because they want to bring them in here, charge you more money for them, and when you could grow hemp in your backyard. You grow cannabis in your backyard. They want you paying for it. And they're running the money through the banks. They're making the money off of it. And then if they catch you with it, they put you in jail. Come on, that's tyranny. That's tyranny. What's that?
I said if you grow your own or do your own thing, you're competition.
Yeah,
competition.
Yeah, Rockefeller said, Rockefeller hates competition, and that's exactly what they did almost 80 years ago, when they made the farmers and the ranchers into bootleggers and moonshiners. They were making the fuel for their Model A's and Model T's and their tractors. And after Prohibition, there was a Standard Oil station on every corner. We don't need. I mean, my friend David, who's on the line here, he wants to run for president. On the ticket, hydrogen and hemp, is the answer for a free country. Hydrogen and hemp. If we were growing hemp and producing hydrogen, you can run your cars off of water. You can run your homes off of magnetics. You can run it off solar. They don't want you having energy. That's why they suppress every free energy device, any perpetual motion machine. And that's why I believe that's why the UFOs are such a top secret, because they don't want you to know we could have lunch on the moon today without burning any gasoline at all. But that's my opinion.
Well, that's pretty much fact. Most of the suppressed technologies are being prepared, paperwork, etc., to be outed to the general public, both the ideas of them, so that everybody understands them, And to go along with that, also the machines or mechanisms necessary for each individual to produce their own power if they so wish. So that's in process as well. Like I said, this is much more intricate and extraordinarily involved than people understand. This is not just, what we're doing is just simply gaining the freedom to do so. And that's my primary focus here, is to get states that do not have paperwork in and have them have a jural assembly and send the paperwork in. Those two contacts that you're going to post are primary contacts for a combination of the paperwork. So I'd say the best thing we can do in terms of everybody wanting to get loose of the constraints and controls is simply to legally put ourselves free again. Once that happens, then all of the other problems can be addressed rather directly and rather quickly.
Well, now, again, one of the problems that I see with all this is when we try to take it to courts, the courts tell you don't even bring that Constitution in here because they're not constitutional. The courts aren't constitutional, and they work for the bankers. The CIA, the FBI, the Mossad, the KGB, or whatever their latest initials are, DHS, Homeland Security. These are all basically criminal organizations, and they're in control, and they ain't gonna let go very easily without actually being arrested. Now, if our courts won't arrest them, and the police and the FBI and the CIA are working for the bankers, how do we get around that? They just ignore it. Don't bring that Constitution in my courtroom.
Well, as I said, there's going to be radical changes. The justice system is going to be converted to straight common law, and that's going to screw a whole bunch of people. The people that have been on the bench that have ruled unconstitutionally are going to be held responsible for their rulings. The people that have been subject to such rulings probably will be set free, depending on what it is they've done. Now, the problem with most of this resides with a combination of legislative legalities. That's where legislation becomes law, and executive orders, and I mean there's a big list of those, and treaties. Okay, all of these things are going to be either negated or renegotiated to comply with our Constitution. If somebody doesn't like the Constitution, and I'll give you a real good example of that, it's called the United Nations. That thing is going to be pushed out in the ocean and see if it floats. This is where we're at right now. The basis for all of this has been, like I say, in planning for years, and things are set, and we are beginning to get the response of the people necessary to accomplish this. As soon as we're free, a lot of changes are coming down the road, and we're going to need all the help we can get to make sure that it's not only constitutional, but it's done right this time. Now, the military, according to posse comitatus, cannot take civilian action. Well, therefore, you use federal marshals. You use the inspector general. And the IG, and I kind of like that guy, he already had paddy wagons and troops on Wall Street ready to take him all to jail at one point, and it was so known. So there's a lot of people that are involved that would just love to be able to do the righteous and right thing, but they are controlled, and you got to bear that in mind. Until we break that control, go outside the judicial system here to the extent that they cannot refuse it, then you have something that can be worked with. You also have to have a combination of support, which we already have in place. When we get done this process, then we'll know what else is required.
All right, we're almost out of time here. Folks, I've got fiction books that you can read right now for $20. $20. Send me a donation. You can read the PDF. If you want a signed copy, it costs more, but I'll ship it to you. And you can send me an email to clay@freeamerican.com. You can order this a book by PayPal. If you just for a $20 donation, that don't mean you know, send me $100 donation and you'll get all of the books. You know, I need some help here. I've got expenses that have come up. You know, when something happens here, you know, like a belt breaks on a Harley,